During the week this week, we've been looking at how dogwoods and beech trees really start to bring autumn to life. And even in a soggy spot in your garden, how that can actually be turned into a real asset.
Good girl. The main blast of butterscotch that we're looking at here now is Cornus Flaviramea, which is golden stem dogwood. So these stems again contrast really nicely, bright yellowy green stems, and they contrast really nicely against the red of the Siberian dogwood over the winter. Pretty much after the winds this week they've dropped, but today with the rain and the wind this week, all of this Flaviramea run is looking fantastic. So again, it's another lovely winter stem colour and structure for your garden. It grows really well in a wet boggy spot. In the spring we'll cut these back really hard, and basically all of this growth is this year's growth since it was cut back in March. If you've got a boggy or wet area in your garden, then either the Siberian, or if you've got space for both, the Flaviramea, both of these will sit really well in a boggy area, and once they're established they'll even take a little bit of drying out over the summer, but they'll also sit in water if you get a flood. If you've got an area in your garden where you can give this space, it's definitely worth it for this blaze of colour for this time of year. They look absolutely stunning. Just to come in, this is a copper beech, but this now is probably my favourite. It looks stunning when it's bright purple for most of the year, but now this week, in the last few days, this has suddenly turned and it's an absolute fireball of gold and embers. It's looking absolutely stunning. And then these leaves are going to start to darken and wither, but they will hold over the winter. If you've got a wet garden, then as an alternative to beech, this is hornbeam that we've been trimming up, so we can open up the space and allow the few that are remaining to grow and again have a bit more light around them. These are ones that we've been trimming to about a 30 centimetre by 30 centimetre width and height, but hornbeam tolerates a lot wetter ground, so it looks very similar to beech. The leaves in the spring and the summer, almost sometimes it's hard to tell them apart. But for a wet spot, boggy spot, if you wanted a hedge particularly, or if you want a feature tree, hornbeam is a lot more tolerant than beech. And you can see in this bed, we've got a few beech at the back that are growing, but they're not growing half as well as the hornbeam. These are young hornbeam. We were looking at the columns on the far side. These are young ones that you could buy a small one, particularly bare root, over the winter. So from the middle to the end of this month, we'll be able to start lifting some of our bare root stock. But we planted these last winter and they will have been about 2 foot high when we first put them in. We grow our trees on from babies into the bigger ones, but again, there's nothing to stop you buying a small young plant over the winter and having a go at your own shaping. Be experimental. You can cut back quite hard and give it a go. While we're here, just our native bog section of wet area of the field, where we've created a weeping dam across to slow the flow of the water. This area fills with water when we get torrential floods because we're on a hill. So we've got a couple of these down the site and it just slows the flow of the water. So we've allowed the sedge to grow in there, and we've also planted the sides with dogwood, stunning now with the yellow foliage, and there's some big tall willow in there as well, all of which helps to absorb some of the water and slow down some of the flow of water going down the hill. In your own garden, if you've got a wet boggy spot, then you could leave it for nature and basically just plant into the right plants. So a stillbeast, dogwood, willow, all of which will absolutely thrive in a wet boggy spot in your own garden, and the wildlife love it. So If you've got an area in your garden that sits particularly wet, try and work with it if you can. A small pond, a small area of bog garden. It can be as simple as raising up, particularly if it's on a slope, raise up and level off across one back, basically to create almost a low shallow bowl was ideal. And what that will allow you to do is to plant a different range of plants for different conditions going up the sides, and the bottom of it, you find that some of the plants, some of the dogwoods and some of the other plants will actually sit quite happily over the winter in water, as long as it dries out then when it stops raining in the summer. So when we've created streams flowing into ponds, or basically small streams flowing into ponds in people's gardens, once you've got that repeat of the regular movement of water, the noise of the moving water helps to encourage and bring in a lot of the small birds, which are then beneficial for helping to eat the pests and the aphids that you don't want in your garden. And again, having a body of water, a very small pond, even if it is only literally a 3 foot by 3 foot space, can help to bring in frogs and other invertebrates. What we've done here, which may not be evident from where you are, is because we're on a slope here, again, this is what I was talking about, not necessarily doing anything on this scale in your garden, but we've mounded up to create our pond. We've dug out the ground and levelled, so we've formed a berm, if you like, or a mound on this side to give me a level body of water, which is our water storage from the drainage system as it comes down the hill. So we looked at these a few weeks ago. This is Calamagrostis brachytrichta. This is one of the few hardy grasses that will stand in a wet clay soil and still flourish. So this is one of the species particularly that would do really well. A lot of the other grasses won't grow as well, particularly if the area gets wet in the winter, but Calamagrostis brachytrichta, which is this one, growing to about 3 foot in flower, again, this one will tolerate a bit of winter wet and it will still flourish in a heavy clay soil, which is one of the questions that I was asked the other day, and again would complement really nicely in a boggy area in your garden. Sorry that we've had to do this over a couple of different sessions. Basically, we had a bit of sun, we've now got heavy rain again, which is perfectly normal for this time of year. But again, thank you for bearing with us. If you've got any questions or comments, then please put them in the comments below. Conlo. I'm going to have so much tidying up to do after you.